I'm with the South Okanagan Local Immigration Partnership. I had a chance to meet with some of you last night, and we've got people from small groups and large groups, some new people, some people that have been around LIP for a very long time. We're actually what I would consider a rural area. Our trading area is probably about 82,000, and the city that I live in is about 33,000. We formed our LIP Council in 2014. What we call our backbone organization is South Okanagan Immigrant and Community Services. We have about 50 members in our LIP Council, ranging from, we actually reached out to all of our municipalities, so we have a lot of government representation, other immigrant and service agencies, public institutes, employment networks. We've got a lot of employers, local associations. What I don't have listed here, but we also have newcomers on our LIP Council and other stakeholders. We started off in 2014, like many of us do, doing some research and putting together a strategic plan. We, right off the bat, started to use the collective impact approach, and we thought we were creating a common agenda and some of the pieces of that collective impact with our strategic plan. The reason why I'm showing you some of this is to kind of give you some of the history to where we were and how we developed more clarity through the collective impact approach. So we started off with a common agenda of laying the groundwork for our communities to blend aspirations of newcomers with the aspirations of our region. And we put together what we thought was conditions of change, but really we were still in that traditional strategic planning, and they were really just 3 goals that we put together for attracting newcomers, to meet our business opportunities, to make sure that we had programs in place, and to increase awareness about how newcomers contribute to our region and how our region can actually contribute to their experience as well. Again, just some history there. But to give you a little background on the whole process, again, this has been over a period of about 3 years. We began with our research and kind of a regional snapshot of where we were. This is what really kind of springboarded the interest for our council when they found out that it can actually take up to 15 years for people to integrate into our communities. From there, we created a subgroup of our, what I call our collective impact crew, so a subgroup from within the LIP Council. With that, I actually just reached out to other people in the LIP Council that I thought would naturally have an interest in the concept of collective impact, so people like the Chamber of Commerce or our Downtown Association. Then we got into the training process, and in phase 1 we had 2 different teleconference training with InnoWeave. We continued on with some different research, particularly focusing on labor market research. And then in phase 2, I think is really when the light bulb started going off for us, when we had the opportunity again to train with InnoWeave, and InnoWeave provided us a facilitator, and we did a full day training session. And this is where we narrowed down what our population level would be, or what our target population would be. What was important about that is that it became tangible to us. So we really knew who we were going to measure. Even though our programs were going to reach beyond that target population, we knew who we were going to measure over a period of time to see if we were making that impact. And we also, at that time, were able to make our impact statement, and really, again, the light bulb went off that it was not just what we were driving, but what other people were driving in the community that would contribute to our success. In the third phase, again, thanks to InnoWeave, we were able to work with a collective impact coach, and this is where we really dug into what our theory of change would be and what our shared measurement framework would be. We've just finished going through that process, and now we're actually into an implementation stage. I don't expect you to read this screen. It's a whole bunch of small print, but if you can imagine that as a big poster up on the wall, we had printed this, and when we used our collective impact crew to really test drive our theory. So if we do these activities, if they come from these strands and we're measuring this, will this all lead to the outcomes that we've stated as part of our theory of change? Ultimately, as he showed you earlier, it turned into this one-page infographic, which states what our theory is, although I can hardly read the screen from here, but basically what we want to do, I'm not sure which screen I can read. Go ahead, can you read that?
Well, which ones do you want me to read?
Just the beginning there,
To increase the pace of social
So
and
in this
economic integration for newcomers by 2020, we intend to increase the number of newcomers who are comfortable communicating in English by 10% and decrease the percentage of unemployed newcomers to 10%.
Right.
A newcomer is a person between the ages of 20 and 50 that has landed in Canada in the last 5 years.
Thank you. Yeah, so that is our impact statement. So basically, I call it the 10-10, two key outcomes that we'll be measuring towards: the increase in the language proficiency and decreasing our unemployment down to 10%. On our last survey, we're around 16% with our newcomers, so it will be a significant change for us to make that impact. This also in this graphic shows what our key levers are, being the English proficiency and newcomer readiness and the employer readiness. And then again, what kind of activities we'll do, what kind of measurements we will look at throughout the time frame. So again, our conditions of change are much clearer for us. It's around the language proficiency and around the lowering the unemployment rate. And then what happens is from when I showed you in the beginning slides where we had some general goals, now our goals are much more specific and much more clearer to us. We want to increase the availability and accessibility and relevance of the language training. We want to ensure that our employers have the knowledge and skills and ability to find, hire, and retain our newcomers. And we want to support newcomers to develop and apply their knowledge and skills and abilities to match the region's work opportunities. So again, a lot more clarity there for what our activities will be based around. And I use this umbrella because we always want to remember that the social piece is very important to us, to make sure that we're doing the public relations piece where we're showing an awareness of the contribution that newcomers bring to us, and again, sharing with the newcomers what kind of contribution our region can bring. So our current status is we knew that we wanted to work with employers and we wanted to have some self-reporting. So instead of trying to work with a whole bunch of employers, we actually put together an employer collective of about 15 employers. We asked those employers to sign a memorandum of understanding and to work with us over the long term, so through 2020. We also selected employers from different regions and different sectors so that we had a good variety. So one of the things that I did with them, for example, is I've sent them out a tip sheet on their job description. Is your job description barrier-free? And then I'll ask them specific questions to respond back so that I know where they're at today and I can compare that to where they're going to be further down the line. So I'm starting to actually create that back and forth reporting between ourselves and the employers. We're also in the process of establishing our baseline, so I wanted to put a kind of stake in the ground. This is where we're at today with some of our measurements. So we did a survey out to our target population. We've also looked at what other sources of data we will be collecting from and what indicators. A lot of those indicators actually come from our settlement services partner, but they also come from other places like Work BC, the library, the census, the colleges, things like that. So where are we going to be pulling that data? And then also, how are we going to manage community context? We're doing some of that by looking back on some other exercises we did in the earlier years, and also we're doing dialogue circles amongst our LIP community and throughout the community. What's great, again, working with Innovive and being in implementation is the ability to do some experimentation. We're doing quite a bit of experimentation around our occupational language training, so how do we improve that language proficiency? So, for example, we're offering a medical English class that helps people move into that sector, move into care aid training, things like that. So just improving their efficiency enough to make that move. We recently have been offering a business English class. And what's nice about that is we've actually had employers send people to the business English class because they want to support them in promoting them in their workforce. We're doing things like exploring online language or online programs, for instance, with the construction safety, and how easy is that for a newcomer to take that online program. So doing a lot of looking at different language training. And we wanted to make sure that we're also cascading into the community. So we recently partnered with the Penticton Toastmasters, and we're offering a Toastmaster Speechcraft program over 8 weeks. for immigrants, and we had filled that class like immediately and even had a waiting list. So that was great. And when we launched the Employer Collective, we launched it with a forum where we brought the employers and job-seeking immigrants together in a forum. We didn't want it just to be a job fair, so we added educational components. We added panel discussions where we had the employers on panel, and then we turned it around and had the immigrants on panel. We had resource fair, things, networking, things like that. And it was a great success in that the immigrants were actually quite surprised that they could have that immediate contact and that kind of level of contact with employers. We borrowed a program from Vernon, and we're going to be launching, again, keeping that umbrella alive. We're going to be launching a multicultural community champion program where we'll profile different immigrants, over 10 immigrants over 10 months, representing 10 different countries. So those are just some of the programs we're working on right now. These next three slides I pulled right out of our measurement system. So we really were looking at it from early years, middle years, and late years. In the early years, how supportive is our community? What kind of awareness do we have in our community? What kind of perceptions are there? What's the media reporting on? In the middle years, which is where we're at right now, do we have any behavioral changes? What kind of progress are we making? Is there some system changes happening at the employer level? One of the things that we're actually just started measuring was people reaching out to our immigrant services. Who in the community is now calling us instead of us calling them all the time? So that's been an interesting measurement. And finally, in the later years, what kind of impact did we do? How did we make a difference to our intended impact target population, and what were some of the unintended impacts that happened over the time? And finally, the other thing we will be measuring is how well are we doing as far as the collective impact process is in play. You know, are we using mutually reinforcing activities? Do we still have a common agenda? Are we engaging the community? You know, are we making interpretations that help us with our decision making? So we'll be looking at evaluating ourselves as well during this process. That's kind of it. I'll just mention that I also have some handouts, so if people actually want those graphics, some of those graphics I showed, you can get it from me.